Hello and welcome to week 46 of Power BI Workout Wednesday. This week we are creating a color contrast calculator. So our end result lets us choose a color and then choose a second color and calculate the color contrast and give advice on whether or not these two colors should be used together for text or non-text content. So I'm going to start with my blank Power BI report, and in the link, in the requirements, I provided the M scripts, so you can copy the M scripts and put them in blank queries in the Power Query editor. And I'll talk you through the logic in this one. All colors have RGB values that range from 0 to 255. So we're basically combining all of those values. And there's a couple functions in here and columns that we add so that we get both the hex values and the decimal values. So we start with our list of values from 0 to 255, and then we get those for red, and we cross join to get green, and then do the same thing to get blue so that we have every combination of red, green, and blue. And then we change those values to hex so that we can get our hex color value at the end. To calculate luminance and color contrast, we have to linearize those values. And then we add in the luminance calculation here. This is just something you get off the internet. This is how luminance and color contrast works. Not something you should necessarily know, but that's why this is provided for you. And then just some cleanup for columns we don't need. And that one is done. I didn't start with values. That's why that's not giving us results yet. I'll go ahead and add that one. So this is our list that goes from 0 to 255. This one is color 1. We'll fix luminance in a second. Add a new source. This one's going to be our function. There we go. And then because we need two colors to let people choose, so they have to be in separate tables, we basically just make a copy of color 1 and call it color 2. And that gives us all 4 of these, so we can move on. may take a couple minutes to refresh because our table does have 16 million rows in it to represent all the colors. And this is what we end up with. This is our decimal values for RGB, our luminance, and our hex value for color. Next, we need to add a few calculations. Oops, there we go. Helps if you spell it right. So I'm going to add RGB 1. And you could do this with selected value as well. So I'm really just returning the string value of RGB so I can put it in the report. And then we'll do the same thing for RGB2. And again, just concatenating the decimal values. And then we need to make our color contrast calculation. So the color contrast requires you to figure out which luminance is greater out of the two colors, and you put that one on top in the division. And then based on that color contrast, we're going to add the advice that tells you how to use that. There we go. So if the color contrast is less than 3, there's not enough contrast for text or non-text. If it is less than 4.5, there's not enough contrast for text. That is less than 14 point, but it's fine for non-text content. If it's greater than 4.5, you can use it for anything. And then I also have little indicators that say whether you should use it in a graph for non-text content and text. So if my color contrast is less than 3, I get an X. If it is greater than or equal to, I get a check. If the color contrast is less than 4.5, you don't use it in text. If it's greater, you're fine, so you get a check. And then we're going to make our SVG charts. So what we do is we get our hex value for color 1 and color 2. And so we choose to use color 1 as the background first and color 2 as the foreground. And this is how we format an SVG, which I gave to you in the instructions, except I'm replacing the background color with my variable up here and the foreground color as well. So that's chart 1. Chart 2 uses the same colors, same logic, but it reverses what's in the foreground versus what's in the background. So now color 2 is background, color 1 is foreground. And then we need to do sample text to show what it looks like in text. So I just did text 1 and text 2. I'll go ahead and add my page background. I made an image in PowerPoint. I'm going to add a title text box. And another one to help answer the questions. Then I'll add my selectors to let people choose. So the selectors are just normal slicers, but they have the selection controls set to single select and the search option on, which is up here, so that people can type in a hex value. So that came from color 1, and the second one comes from color 2, just populated with the hex field from each table. And then I used the advanced card. You could use a regular card, any custom visual. You could use a text box and do the smart narrative, but I liked the card. There we go, advanced card. So if I add the advanced card, I'm going to move it up here for a second. Here's why I like it. I can drop my color 1 hex in there, and then I can do a prefix and say color 1. And then I may want to fix my formatting, but I like being able to just type in a label. So I'm going to make my data label be 16 point. That looks a little better, and I'll change that to Calibri. And I'll make my prefix the same. There we go. And I'm going to make it a little smaller. And I'll adjust this in a bit. But I'm going to do 2 sections here, one for the first color and one for the second color. So I can just copy that and replace that one with color 2 and change my prefix label here. And then do the same thing for RGB for color 1. We're gonna left align so that these things line up a little better. make a copy for color 2 and switch the measure. And then do the same for luminance. So for color 1 luminance, I need to go out to 4 decimal places and change my and then make a copy and populate it with luminance from color 2. And this one needs to get left aligned, and all of these need to line up, so I'm just going to format. And then distribute vertically. All right. Next, we need to add our contrast ratio. And for that, I used the Enlightened data story visual, but you can do it with a regular text box. There we go. So I'm going to put this underneath color and just drag it out to match. And I'm going to put color contrast in the data values. And then for story, oops, I'm going to do that. So the way the Enlightened data story visual works is that you replace your data value with a hash or pound sign, and then it turns that into the number from your measure. And you can change the replacement token here. So if you happen to actually need the hash, you can use something else there. And I'm just going to fix my text. Turn off my title. And there we go. And then on mine I did a gray background instead of white, just to call attention to it. Oops. And then I made a copy and put one right below it so that I could do the advice. So in this story, I did usage, appropriate for large text. There we go. And now we have to do our SVGs and our check marks. So what I did was I created a table. We'll do it about that big. And I added chart 1. Oh, but we have to go and change that to an image URL. And now it will show up as a graph. And I renamed this just for usability to color 1 foreground. And then add chart 2, color 2 foreground. And change chart 2 to an image URL as well. And then I add color 1 as text. So that's our text 1 measure, and color 2. And now I've added the text, but I need to do some extra formatting to make this work. So I'm renaming this color 1 text, color 2 text. So to get the color for my 3rd and 4th columns, I'm going to add conditional formatting. And I'm going to change it to field value. And the first one, color 1, is the foreground. So since I'm in background, I choose the hex value for color 2. And then I do the font color as field value and the hex value for color 1. And then I switch to the 4th column and do the same thing but backwards. Field value, this one is color 1 hex. Field value, color 2 hex. And now we have our colors. There we go. And the last thing is the checks or X's for using in a graph or using in a in text. So I'm adding a card and I'm going to turn off category and make that a bit smaller here. And then I'm going to add conditional formatting to change the color. So I'm going to do rules based on color contrast. And if the value is greater than or equal to 0 and is less than 3, I want it to be red because that's going to be our X. And if the value is greater than 3, and really there is no, I mean the maximum is 21, so I'm just going to say in less than 22, then I want it to be more a dark gray. Same thing over here, but I'm going to replace the field with use in text. Go to data label. change our color logic. So if the value is greater than or equal to 0 and is less than or equal to 4.5, then we want red. And if it's greater than 4.5 and less than 22, then we want it to be gray. And there we go. So to polish up my report, I went in and checked my accessibility. Since we have a white background where the content is, we have a lot of options for text color, that type of thing. So all of my text has, in fact, a greater than 4.5 contrast ratio. And then I went in and added alt text to every item on the page. And I added a little bit more info in mine. So if you are curious about color contrast, you can go check out the accessibility standards, the tools that help you measure color contrast, and articles about color in general in DataViz. I hope you enjoyed this exercise. Feel free to leave questions and comments on the blog post on workout-wednesday.com. This is Megan signing off. Thanks so much for watching.